A new and unexpected challenge has emerged between the United States and India, two nations whose partnership has been a cornerstone of global diplomacy in recent years. Former President Donald Trump has announced a sweeping 50% tariff on all Indian imports, citing India's ongoing trade with Russia as the primary reason for this drastic measure. This aggressive move, revealed in September 2025, has sent shockwaves through the international community. It has put significant strain on a partnership that, until now, had been growing stronger with each passing year, marked by increased cooperation in technology, defense, and trade. The new tariff is designed to make Indian goods much more expensive in the U.S. market, threatening the stability of India's export-driven economy. Indian business leaders are now facing uncertainty, and questions are being raised about the future of the alliance between the two democracies. At the heart of the issue is India's continued purchase of Russian oil and defense equipment. The U.S. argues that these transactions indirectly help fund Russia's ongoing actions in Ukraine, a conflict that has drawn global condemnation and led to widespread sanctions. The tariff is being used as a tool to pressure India to align more closely with the U.S. and its Western allies, especially on matters of international security and economic policy. Both countries now face a critical test. Can they navigate this period of friction and disagreement without undoing years of hard-won cooperation and mutual trust? The stakes are incredibly high, not just for the two nations involved, but for democracy, security, and economic growth throughout the Indo-Pacific region. The outcome could influence the balance of power in Asia for years to come. This dispute forces both sides to confront a major disagreement head-on, testing the resilience and adaptability of their partnership in the face of global challenges. The outcome of this standoff will not only shape the future of US-India collaboration on the world stage but also set a precedent for how major democracies handle conflict in an increasingly interconnected world. Trump openly admitted that the tariff decision had strained relations with India, acknowledging the weight of the move and its impact on a key international partnership. He described it as a difficult but necessary step, emphasizing that sometimes leadership requires making unpopular choices for the greater good. Inside the White House, officials were well aware that the diplomatic fallout would be significant, and that the decision could reverberate far beyond just trade relations. Yet after months of back-channel discussions and failed attempts to persuade India through softer means, they saw no alternative but to act decisively. By framing the move as a last resort, Trump signaled the seriousness of U.S. concerns over India's growing ties with Russia, especially in the context of global security and shifting alliances. This approach highlights the delicate balance between maintaining a strong alliance and enforcing foreign policy objectives, a challenge faced by leaders on both sides. Trump's candor set a direct and unmistakable tone for negotiations, making it clear that the U.S. was willing to risk diplomatic friction to uphold its stance on Russia and protect its strategic interests. The public statement also put pressure on both sides to find a way forward, raising the stakes for diplomats and leaders to resolve the dispute quickly. While the U.S. has taken a hard line, the door remains open for dialogue and diplomacy, signaling hope for a constructive resolution. The challenge now is to find a resolution that addresses both countries' core interests without sacrificing the long-term partnership that has been built over decades. This moment is a true test of the resilience and adaptability of the U.S.-India partnership, as both sides weigh their options under intense global scrutiny. The world is watching closely to see if these two major democracies can move past this rift and set an example for international cooperation. The stakes are high for both nations' global standing, economic futures, and their ability to influence the international order. Ultimately, the outcome of this standoff will set a precedent for how close allies handle deep disagreements, shaping the future of global diplomacy for years to come. The U.S. justifies the 50% tariff by pointing to India's robust and growing trade with Russia, a relationship that has only deepened in recent years, despite mounting global tensions. This partnership is especially prominent in two critical sectors: oil and defense, where India has become one of Russia's most important customers. Every barrel of Russian oil that arrives in Indian ports, and each new defense deal signed between New Delhi and Moscow, is seen by American policymakers as providing Moscow with vital revenue that helps Russia withstand Western sanctions imposed over the war in Ukraine. The U.S. sees India's actions as directly impacting global security, arguing that continued trade with Russia undermines international efforts to pressure Moscow. As a result, Washington is using tariffs as a foreign policy tool, not just an economic one, to send a clear message. The goal is to make it increasingly costly for India to maintain its current relationship with Russia, pushing New Delhi to reconsider its choices and align more closely with Western interests. This strategy signals to the world that doing business with U.S. adversaries can have real tangible consequences even for long-standing partners. The focus on both oil and defense is deliberate. Oil brings immediate cash flow to Russia's economy, while defense deals create long-term strategic and military ties that are harder to unwind. By targeting both sectors, the U.S. is challenging the entire spectrum of India-Russia relations, from short-term economic gains to deep-rooted strategic partnerships. The tariff is a blunt instrument, but it's designed to force a difficult choice. Should India prioritize its historic partnership with Moscow, or secure continued access to the lucrative American market and its advanced technology? This is a high-stakes gamble in global diplomacy, with the potential to reshape alliances and economic ties for years to come. The U.S. hopes that economic pain and uncertainty will ultimately drive a shift in India's foreign policy, nudging it away from Moscow and closer to Washington. But there's a significant risk. This pressure could backfire, pushing a key partner like India further away, and potentially encouraging it to seek new alliances. The world is watching closely to see how India responds to this diplomatic and economic challenge, knowing that its decision could have ripple effects across the globe. India's response has been firm. Its foreign policy is guided by national interest, not outside pressure. Officials in New Delhi insist on their sovereign right to make decisions that best serve their economy and people. India defends its Russian oil purchases as a pragmatic necessity for energy security, given its massive population and economic needs. The government argues these deals are about affordability, not politics. On defense, India points to decades-old ties with Russia, saying abrupt changes would threaten national security. India is diversifying suppliers, including buying more from the U.S., but insists this transition takes time. The message is clear: India won't be pushed into choices that undermine its core interests. This stance highlights the complexity of its position, balancing ties with both the U.S. and Russia. Managing this challenge will require careful diplomacy from all sides. The tariff dispute is part of a larger geopolitical struggle involving Russia, Europe, and the Ukraine conflict. Trump has noted that India's trade with Russia is a bigger problem for Europe, but the U.S. felt compelled to act. The tariffs are meant to close a loophole in the global pressure campaign against Moscow. This shows how bilateral issues can become battlegrounds for global contests. The U.S. and its allies have taken a hard line on Russia, while India and other developing nations prioritize economic stability. The tariff is an attempt to push India into the Western coalition. The outcome will affect not just Washington and New Delhi, but also signal to other countries how the U.S. enforces its global agenda. The dispute sits at the crossroads of East-West tensions, the Indo-Pacific's future, and the balance of power with China. Its ripple effects will be felt worldwide. Despite the harsh tariffs, U.S.-India talks continue. Both sides are committed to finding a diplomatic solution and avoiding a damaging trade war. Public statements from officials express cautious optimism, aiming to reassure markets and businesses. The core issue: the U.S. wants India to reduce trade with Russia. India wants the tariffs lifted while protecting its sovereignty. Finding common ground will require creativity and compromise. The outcome will shape the future of their partnership. Success would prove the alliance can weather serious disagreements. Failure could lead to prolonged economic friction and undermine cooperation in other areas. The world is watching these negotiations closely. The 50% tariffs weren't imposed overnight. They were rolled out through a series of executive orders in late 2025. This phased approach gave India time to respond and allowed the U.S. to control the escalation. Using executive orders let the president act swiftly, bypassing Congress and sending a strong message. The high tariff was designed to be disruptive, making Indian goods far less competitive in the U.S. market. The severity underscores how seriously the Trump administration views India's Russia ties. The gradual rollout created uncertainty for businesses and maximized pressure on India. This strategy was meant to force New Delhi to the negotiating table. The process highlights the power of the executive branch in shaping foreign trade policy. The ultimate goal: compel India to reconsider its relationship with Russia. This tariff crisis is a fundamental test of the U.S.-India relationship. Both nations have deepened cooperation on defense and technology, positioning themselves as key partners in the Indo-Pacific. Now, their strategic vision is threatened by sharp disagreements over Russia. The dispute exposes the complexity of modern alliances, partners in some areas, rivals in others. How they resolve this will determine the alliance's long-term health. A diplomatic solution would prove the partnership's resilience. Prolonged conflict could erode decades of trust and goodwill. At its core, this is about balancing national interests and recognizing each other's positions. The challenge for diplomats: reconcile these differences and keep the alliance strong,